All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session, the first session of our Beginning Farmer and Rancher Lunchtime webinar series. This will be a weekly series throughout the spring from now until the middle of May. And we'll cover a range of topics that we hope will be helpful for beginning farmers and ranchers. You'll see that I've already put a few things in the chat today. I am the presenter today and also monitoring the chat, so I'll do my best to get to questions and things that you post in the chat, though that may be towards the end of my presentation today. With that said, if you do have any questions, please do feel free to put those in the chat, and we will get started. Again, good afternoon. I'm Josh Campbell, and I am the Beginning Farmer Rancher Extension State Program Coordinator here at Oklahoma State University. I'm really excited to host this weekly webinar series. The series is designed to provide new and aspiring farmers and ranchers with knowledge and tools and resources to build a strong foundation for success with their agricultural business. So whether you're just getting started or you're transitioning from one type of operation to another, or maybe you're just looking for ways to improve your existing agricultural business, our goal is going to be to connect you with practical and research-based information that's going to be helpful to you along the way. The series is hosted by OSU Extension, but we have a lot of great partner organizations that you'll be hearing from throughout the series. At OSU Extension, we have a statewide network of extension offices in all of Oklahoma's 77 counties that allow us to be able to provide resources tailored to your needs and specific to your area, so we can provide local support to you. Our mission is to support farmers and ranchers at every stage of their operation, and we want to help them make informed decisions that are going to set you up for long-term success. We also, I would like to acknowledge the support of the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, USDA NIFA, and the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program. So the support of the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program is what has made this webinar series possible, and so their support is really enabling us to provide educational opportunities and support to beginning producers across Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a very diverse and increasingly growing population of beginning farmers and ranchers, and we actually have 2% more beginning producers in Oklahoma than the national average. We know that starting a farm and ranch can be extremely challenging, and many new producers, especially those with less formal experience, are going to face steep learning curves. And so the purpose of this series is really just to empower new and aspiring producers with some of the knowledge, some resources, some tools to help you be as successful as possible with your agricultural operation. We'll do our best to answer questions, connect you to helpful resources and agencies to support you. And then, of course, you can reach out to us anytime with specific ways that we can support you. Over the next several weeks, as we have these weekly webinar series, like I said, you'll hear from a variety of speakers. Each webinar will cover a specific topic. Unlike today, we're going to kind of talk a little higher level, just kind of general over some of the basic questions that I think are important for beginning producers to think through. We'll hear more specific topics in the weeks to come, and then each session will allow about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for some discussion and question and answer with speakers. So with all that said, we really do truly appreciate you joining us this afternoon during the lunch hour for this session. We'll try to keep on time and get you out of here promptly and provide you as much helpful resources as possible. Let's get started. So I'll be your instructor for today's session. I'm going to share my slides here, and we will jump right in. Okay. Hopefully everyone is seeing my slide set there. Um, there we go. Okay, you should be seeing my slide set there. Um, and if not, please feel free to raise your hand or speak up if you're not seeing that. But on my end, it looks like everybody's seeing that, so we'll jump right in. Again, I do want to acknowledge the support of the USDA and the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program for their support of this webinar series. Our Beginning Farmer Rancher webpage, which many of you have probably already been on, but I've linked it there in the chat, is a great place to get started with some information. The QR code's also there on the screen if you want to snap it with your phone. This is a webpage that is newly been established, and we are populating it with new material all the time. And so this will be a good starting point for accessing many of the resources that we'll talk about. On this web page, I do encourage you that on the front page there is a sign up sheet, and I'll use my little laser pointer here to show you there. There's an orange tab there that just says sign up for program news and updates. If you click on that, it will take you to this page here, and it will ask you to fill out some basic information. Almost all of the information is optional, except for your name and email address in the county in which you reside. If you sign up here, it adds you to our email list, so you'll be in the loop of all the different programming that we're doing, and I'll share monthly resources for you. But if you provide the optional information, it's extremely helpful to us as we're reporting back to stakeholders, the USDA and others, how we're impacting beginning producers. And actually, at the bottom here, you'll see a list of resources, of topics where we are asking you to basically indicate what topics you need support with. And over the course of the last few months, the content that has been put here by folks signing up for our list is what has kind of informed the development of this webinar series. And so financial issues have been a constant theme, something that beginning producers really are expressing a need for more information on. And so many of the webinar topics that we will touch on over the next several weeks will have kind of a financial business bent. Also on this webpage, you'll find a number of fact sheets. I did put one of these in the chat, but if you go to that webpage, you'll find access to a number of resources. We have some great fact sheets, and I'm currently working on, with colleagues, many others that will be added with beginning farmer rancher specific content. We have a number of online courses that are also helpful for beginning producers. Things like our Quicken Farm and Ranch record keeping, our Market Garden School series, beef cattle nutrition, and a host of others that are helpful, kind of self-paced online courses that you can take. And then we also have a list of some of our upcoming events and our kind of more robust manuals. For instance, our cow-calf boot camp that's coming up in early April is accepting registrations right now. We have a number of fact sheets. OSU Extension, I'm sure you may be familiar with the fact sheets that we have, and we have thousands of fact sheets that can be accessed through our OSU Extension website. And today, I'm going to kind of be talking about information that can be found in these two resources. They're both very comprehensive and full of information, so I won't be touching on everything that's covered in these two resources, but I point this out because I'd encourage you to go check out both of these, and they'll be a resource for you to get kind of further information beyond what we have today. Also, as we get started, I think it's important for us to get some clarity around the terminology that we're using. You'll be hearing from a number of different speakers, like I said, over the course of the next several weeks, folks from USDA agencies and others, and we'll use the term beginning farmer, young farmer, other terminology. And So I'd like you to understand kind of some of the definitions that we'll be operating under. So when you hear the term young, that is defined as a producer 35 years or younger. But beginning farmer and rancher has nothing to do with age. It actually has more to do with your experience level and the length of time that you've been engaged in an agricultural operation. And so that is defined as 10 years or less formal farm and ranch operation. And so you think about a Schedule F with your farm taxes. If you have 10 years or less of filing a Schedule F, or you have been on the books registered with the Farm Service Agency for 10 years or less, then you would qualify as a beginning farmer or rancher. And that's the kind of the criteria that's used for many USDA programs and services. We won't get into in depth on that today, but I just tell you that to kind of to create some sort of shared definition for terminology that we'll be using. I will say that if you are a more veteran or established producer that's been at it for a while, but you're kind of rethinking and kind of reimagining what your operation could look like, I hope that you'll know that the resources that we have are maybe pertinent to you as well. We have resources to support you. And so just because we're talking from the context of beginning farmer and rancher doesn't mean that established producers don't have something that they could gain from participating in our programming. Here's just a glimpse at the state of Oklahoma. Like I said, we do have 2% more beginning producers than the national average. And this is just a quick glimpse at the top 10 counties by population where beginning producers are. Here in Oklahoma, no doubt we have beginning producers across all corners of the state, all 77 counties. These are just the top 10 where we have the greatest numbers. And I thought that would be an interesting slide to show you kind of some of the counties where we have a large number of beginning producers. Every 5 years, the USDA does what's called the Ag Census. And so the most recent Ag Census was conducted in 2022. And it provides kind of a look at the trends in U.S. agriculture and in state-specific trends from the period of 2017 to 2022. And during this period, we saw a 10% drop in the number of farms and ranches in the state of Oklahoma. We saw a 4% drop in the total farmland in production, so the farm acres in production, and we saw a 4% drop in the number of producers in the state. Here in Oklahoma, we have about 9.4% of our producers who would qualify or classify as young producers. The average age of a producer in the state of Oklahoma is 58. And so while we do have more beginning producers than the national average, certainly we see a need for investing in new and beginning producers and investing in folks that are getting into farming and ranching for the first time. We know that 65% of the producers in the state of Oklahoma maintain off-farm jobs to help support their farm and ranch enterprises. And so all these are just kind of to show you some of the high level statistics and perspective of Oklahoma, and kind of build the case for why we are trying to support beginning farmers and ranchers. So let's jump right into it. Today, like I said, I want to take a little bit of a flyover in the short amount of time that I have with you over some of the things that I think it's important for beginning farmers and ranchers to think about. And as I'm consulting with a beginning producer, I ask a set of questions and a series of questions that help guide us through getting to where, navigating some of the things that all beginning producers need to navigate. So you may find that you are not, you might find yourself at a different spot in some of the things that we talk about today, but these are the types of questions that are going to help us determine where you are, and maybe what are the next steps from where you are today. And so I always start with goal setting. I ask the question, what are you hoping to achieve? And I think as producers ask this question, what are you hoping to achieve? What am I hoping to achieve? You can really get some strong goal setting accomplished through that. Setting goals from the outset will give you direction and focus for your operation. It's going to help you prioritize decision making. And I think many of us come into farming and ranching with some general ideas of what we hope to do. But as we get into goal setting formally, it helps us get very, very specific. It helps us to get things written down, and then it makes those goals more effective, practical, and helpful for us. So if we have strong goals, then it helps us develop a roadmap to ensure that our plans and the things that we're doing are aligning with our desired outcomes. And it also allows us to benchmark and track success. So some of the specific questions to consider within goal setting are, I always ask somebody, what are you aiming to accomplish? And so if we got more specific with that, maybe we're asking, am I hoping to generate supplemental income for my family, and I'm going to maintain an off-farm job, or am I hoping to quit the off-farm job and make this a full-time income for my family? Maybe the question is, I'm just wanting to embrace a rural lifestyle and homestead. And so then the way we think about that is less about profit, and maybe it's more about how do we develop a plan that leads to a break even where your expenses are covered as best as possible, but profit and growth of the business are less of a priority than it would be if your goal is a full-time farm income. Others may be approaching this from the perspective of wanting to continue on a farm family legacy for future generations. And so you're thinking about things about how do we transition farm land and farmland-based equipment, resources, all of those things. How do we transition that from one generation to the next? And how do we maintain the ability for this farm to continue to be a viable and productive resource for future generations? So you start to answer some of those questions, and it helps you to get to where you can develop some short-term and long-term goals. And I will say, I think a lot of producers, as we start to talk through these types of things, kind of think of these as fluffy, touchy-feely type things to talk about. And I understand that, but I will say that if you take this seriously, and you really put some priority into your goal setting, it's going to set you up for long-term success, and you'll be glad that you did that. One of the reasons I say that is that your goals need to align with your family and your business objectives. I can't think of very many situations where a farm or ranch business, any enterprise, is not somehow entangled with family, with some sort of shared land or equipment ownership. And so other people and other stakeholders are involved with the things we do. And so we need to make sure that we are thinking clearly through all of those issues so that we avoid conflict and so that we set ourselves up for success from the outset. So you've probably heard of the SMART goals and creating goals that are SMART, that would be specific, measurable, action-oriented, reasonable, time-bound. It's important to have measurable and time-bound goals. And so there's some examples here for you of some goals that are specific and also time-bound. And so these are just some examples for you to consider and think about as you think about the context of your own operation. We do have a goal setting resource. So this QR code here will take you to that. And I would encourage you, especially if you find yourself at this point in the process where you're still trying to sort through your goal setting and kind of get some clarity around what you're going to be doing with your operation. Or perhaps you're at the point where you have an established existing family operation and you're thinking about the transition from one generation to the next. And so you need to go back to the goal setting table and think about, okay, what is the future going to look like? And so goal setting is not something that happens once necessarily and never happens again. It can be an iterative process. And this tool that we have, this fact sheet, is a great starting point for that. It will help you build those SMART goals, those specific, measurable, action-oriented, reasonable, and time-bound goals that will set you up for success. This is also perhaps a good time to start thinking about the legal structures, the entities that you'll be establishing. So what I mean by that is Are you going to be operating as a sole proprietor or as an LLC? Are you going to start, a legal trust? How are you going to structure this operation? And we'll be talking about some of those specifics and questions and considerations associated with that in, I think, week 3 of this webinar series. So the next question I ask, you've gotten a good sense of the goals that you have for yourself and for your family farm ranch operation. So the next question would be, what exactly will you produce? What's it going to cost you to produce that? What's it going to take to get started? And so that's the next question. And that really leads us to this idea of budgeting and enterprise planning, where you're trying to identify the specific farm and ranch activities and get some clarity around those so that you can get a true sense of the cost benefit analysis of doing one type of activity versus another. And what so for example, maybe you have intentions of doing some crop production and some livestock, and you can start to think about each of those elements individually and what might be the capital cost associated with that. What are the potential profits that you could yield with the right inputs? And so you can start to think through those issues with the concept of budgeting. Within budgeting, and these resources here, you can access these all from the QR code. We also have a eFarm management website, which is a great tool developed by our OSU Ag Economics department. And this website has a host of farm management tools and resources, videos for you. And many of the sessions from this webinar series will also be hosted on this platform eventually. So go there, check those resources out. One of the resources you'll find there is on budgets. And this is a fact sheet that can be accessed through our OSU Extension website. And when you think about budgeting, there's really 3 types of budgets associated with farm and ranch businesses. There's the whole farm budget, which really is taking into consideration everything that would be associated with the farm business. Maybe you have some livestock, you have some crop production, you have some other things that are going on, and it takes into account all of those things as one whole farm budget. Whereas the enterprise budget really dials in on the specific activities, production practices, and helps you really start to understand the nuances of your business. And then a partial budget, we won't talk much about that, but a partial budget really helps you tweak various elements within your budget to kind of project, okay, if this happened, what would it do to my overall business? And if this happened, what would it do to my business? So we'll talk about enterprise budgeting specifically just briefly today, and we'll get into that again in a future session where we'll really dive into how to use enterprise budgets to help you as a beginning farmer and rancher. Enterprise budgets really are about helping you estimate profitability for individual activities within your farm or ranch. So we have a host of budgets on the eFarm management website. There's a budgeting page there with various enterprise budgeting tools. And the budgets are going to help you start to ask questions such as, how am I going to manage the resources that I have the most effectively and efficiently? What enterprises, whether it be crops or livestock or whatever, are going to be the most productive and provide me the best returns? Are going to be most conducive to the goals that I've established? How much land and other equipment and capital resources are going to be needed to get this enterprise off the ground? Those types of questions are what enterprise budgets allow you to answer. This is just an example image of what an enterprise budget could look like. So we do have Excel budgets and spreadsheets that you can access for free from our eFarm management website. And then we have the fillable PDF versions. These are just simple tools, so don't take them as perfect in terms of their application for you, but they can be really helpful starting points for getting some solid thought around the individual enterprises that you may engage in. So we have a host of different enterprise budget templates: cow, calf, meat, goat, blackberries, grapes, horticultural, specialty crop, commodity crop, livestock, a range of different budgets that you can play with. And these tools are updated every year. And so they're updated with current cost, and modified so that they're as up to date and as relevant as possible. And then you can go into these and actually manipulate the variables that are specific to you. If you have specific land cost or capital equipment cost or labor cost or whatever, you can manipulate those variables specific to your contacts to start to build a real specific picture of your operation and what this enterprise would look like in the context of your operation. Another tool that I want to bring to your radar is this tool called Crop Cost. This is a tool that was developed by the Center for Farm Financial Management. They are based out of the University of Minnesota, and we'll actually be hearing from them next week. They'll be talking to us about business planning and building robust business plans and some of the tools that they have for that. But Crop Cost is a great tool specifically for specialty crops and also some of the commodity crops, but really primarily specialty crop production. It's a great tool for kind of doing some basic financial calculations, helping you make some simple financial analysis of different crops, and kind of determining kind of a pros and cons, and determining what it could look like in terms of potential revenue for you if you were to grow that crop on your place. So once we've developed some goals, once we've gotten some clarity around the specific enterprises that we will engage in, the next question that I ask people is, what's your plan over time? And so essentially we're getting at this idea of business planning. What is it that is going to sustain your business? Who are your customers? Where are you selling? How are you going to grow the business over time? And so a business plan is an extremely important element of the pathway to developing a strong and successful business for any beginning farmer or rancher. But I feel like sometimes we don't do a good enough job of doing the early work to prepare ourselves for successfully building a business plan. And so I like to make sure that we've asked the right questions so that we end up at a point where when we are business planning, we have the necessary information. We've already thought through the things that we need to think through to build a successful business plan. Business plans are like a GPS or a roadmap for your operation. And so they're going to be a great tool for you to reflect back on to benchmark. But really more than that, they are actually a way for you to share your business with others, potential lenders. They're going to include, what you plan to produce, who your customers are, how you're going to grow the business over time. There are key elements that any business plan should include. I will say they can be as robust or as simple as you want to make them. So they don't have to be very complex. They can be as simple as 1 or 2 pages or as long as 100 pages. But at their core, they need to be able to convey what your business is doing and how it's going to be successful over time. And so we have a great fact sheet on developing a business plan that I would encourage you to check out. It'll be a helpful tool for you. And I will say that having a business plan is pretty much a prerequisite for anything that you would want to do, working with a bank, even going into our USDA FSA offices and getting financial assistance there in the form of a loan, even grants. If we talk about granting organizations, grants are going to often require you have some sort of basic business plan or financial statement associated with your application package. And so it's really important that you get to the point of having a business plan. One of the resources that I'd like to share with you today too is this website called farmanswers.org. I really appreciate the resources that are here. This is a USDA supported website that is a part of it's managed by the USDA Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program. And it's cataloged with all sorts of resources and information for beginning producers. They have a library of resources. They have information on USDA assistance. There's a regular podcast where they interview beginning producers and programs supporting beginning producers across the nation. But probably the most helpful is this beginning farmer toolbox. And so we'll take a look at that. If you went to farmanswers.org and you clicked on the toolbox, this is just a screenshot of some of there's kind of a rolling page of lots of different toolbox topics that you can click through. And so you'll find things on marketing, farmland access, but let's say we clicked on the business planning toolbox. One of the resources that is in there is a tool called Ag Plan. And actually next week, we'll learn how to build a business plan using Ag Plan, and we'll talk more specifically about the elements of a business plan. But I just wanted to bring this to your radar so you could explore it and kind of start to think about it if this would be helpful to you. Ag Plan is essentially a way to build a robust business plan by being guided through the templates that they provide for you. So let's say we select an agritourism template. It has a list of the components of the business plan. And then as you click on each component, this is the business summary, there's a text box for you to start typing in your business summary. But there's tips, there's resources, there's samples of other real business plans and their response to this business summary section that you can use to kind of inform your filling out of this portion of the business plan. And so I find this to be a really helpful way to guide beginning producers through at least their first attempt at developing a business plan. If you go through Ag Plan and you start to populate this information, you fill it out, you will have the makings of a really, really solid business plan that then you could come and sit down with, myself or somebody at, Career Tech or other agencies that support beginning producers at developing business plans, and we could make it a little more robust. But this is a great starting tool. So once we've developed goals, we've got a clear idea of the types of activities we're going to engage in as a beginning producer. We have a business plan that kind of gives us that direction and helps communicate our business to others. Then we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to fund this operation? So for some, maybe, we have 65% of producers in the state of Oklahoma that maintain an off-farm income. For some, maybe they're planning to cash flow everything through off-farm income. Others are needing to think about how they're going to acquire capital in the form of a loan or other assistance programs. And so it's important to think about how you're going to finance your operation. Anytime you go to a lender, they're going to need some basic information. One of those things is a business plan, and then you're going to need some basic projections, some budgets that explain kind of what your operation is going to do, a plan for how you're going to make income. So these are some of the basic elements of what you'll need for going before a lender. And again, we'll talk more about this stuff specifically in weeks to come, but just wanted it to be on your radar. We have a whole host of financial planning fact sheets that you can access through our eFarm management website and other resources that can be helpful to you on this topic. But one of the questions that I find that beginning producers often ask is, what are the agencies that support beginning farmers and ranchers? Where can we go for financial assistance? Those types of questions. And so I tell people the front door to the USDA in terms of accessing USDA services is the Farm Service Agency. And we'll hear from them in a couple weeks. They have a range of programs to support beginning producers, including some loans, cost share programs, and then they kind of serve as the starting point for access to other USDA agencies such as the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which we'll also talk about later. Then you have kind of the more traditional lending, interaction with banks type type approach, which would be either dealing with the farm credit institutions in the state, which are kind of like partner or sister institutions to Farm Service Agency. They can actually do some joint financing where maybe the Farm Service Agency at a lower interest rate funds um, part of your loan, and then Farm Credit comes in and does the other part. So there's some creative ways that they can work with you to establish financing that is going to really work well for you. And then there are traditional banks that also do agricultural lending. In fact, here in Oklahoma, there are a number of institutions, just traditional banking institutions, that will do farm and ranch type loans. And then the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry, they they don't do as much in the way of traditional financing, but they certainly do offer some grant programs and other assistance programs to producers, and are worth noting. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of the types of places you can go, but it's a good glimpse at kind of the way that accessing farm loans could work. There are quite a few different grant programs as well. And I will say the grant programs, each agency's expectations and what's required are going to look different, but there are a range of programs to support beginning, veteran, new and beginning producers. And so, of course, Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry has their Agriculture Enhancement and Diversification grants. We'll hear from them in a few weeks as well about the specifics of this grant program and some of the expectations that they have. How to fill out a successful application for their grant program. So we'll hear from them. There's also the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education programs. They have producer grants and other on-farm research grants, which you may have an interest in taking a look at. A recent one that I became aware of is the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association grant. They have a beginning beef producer grant where they'll fund particularly they want to help get young producers under the age of 35 into the industry. And so these are just, again, a glimpse of some of the different grant programs that are out there. And then I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the differences between grants and cost shares and loans. So as an extension professional, I often have beginning producers come to me just basically saying, I need financial assistance. And often the first place that people start is they want grant money, right? Grants sound great because it sounds like free money with no strings attached. Often that's not the case. Even grants are going to have some sort of stipulations and requirements. But in a nutshell, if I were to explain the difference between what grants and cost shares and loans are for beginning producers, grants are not going to have a repayment, but they often will have some sort of requirement, whether that be an educational output, some sort of outreach output, and they rarely will fund capital assets. What I mean by that is they're not going to build permanent infrastructure or pay for permanent infrastructure. This is, again, general speaking. When we talk about cost share, this is the types of programs that you may be familiar with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, even the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry, and others are really not grants as much as they are cost shares, where you're fronting the cost associated with an activity, and then there's some sort of matching or repayment that comes along with that to help offset the cost of that. So these are typically going to be in the form of reimbursements after you've already incurred the expense. And then loans, things like we mentioned from Ag Credit and Farm Service Agency and other traditional lenders are going to be what you would think of as a traditional loan. They're going to have repayment periods and specific terms with interest rates. And they will typically allow you to purchase assets, farmland, infrastructure, equipment, things like that. So the next thing I ask people as we've navigated their goals, we've gotten a good clarity around what they're going to do in terms of the specific production practices on their operation. They've developed a business plan. They have a solid understanding of how they're going to fund their operation, where they're going to get their financing, is what other programs exist. So we start to think about how do we navigate accessing USDA programs and other maybe state and local programs that can support beginning producers. And so a good place to start is farmers.gov. There's a lot of great information here. There, again, the FSA is the front door to the USDA, the way I describe it. You have to go through the FSA to access most of what the USDA has to offer in terms of actual programs, though many agencies will offer technical assistance, which we'll talk about later, whether you're connected formally or not. But a good place to start is farmers.gov. You can actually establish an account online. You can actually play with their farm loan assistance tool and kind of determine whether you qualify and what some of the specifics of a farm loan might look like for you. And I will say I don't have time to get into it today, but this is different when we talk about the Farm Service Agency and a farm and track number with the USDA. It's different than a farm tax exemption. Farm tax exemption is a state level exemption, and we'll talk about that at a later time. But it is a tax exemption for things that you purchase for use on the farm. And it is a different thing than your farm and track number that you establish with the FSA to access USDA programs and services. There's a farmers.gov. This QR code will take you there, but there's a great step 1 through 6, how to start a farm operation. I find this to be really helpful. It's just kind of a thought path for what your steps are. And so kind of like I'm doing today, where we're kind of asking questions and navigating, where we need to, what we need to address before we move on to the next question. This information on farmers.gov is really helpful at kind of adding clarity to that picture. Other things that we can ask is, what educational resources exist to help me continue to improve my skill set, to gain new experience, to plan for maybe diversifying my operation if I'm already an established producer, but I want to add some other type of enterprise. What education exists for me to do that? And there are tons and tons of resources out there. I'm not even going to be able to touch on but a few today. But of course, we have the OSU County Extension offices. We have an extension office in all of Oklahoma's 77 counties. We can provide local assistance to you, pertinent information within your local context to support your farm and ranch operation. So that would be things like we can provide on-farm consultation, soil, water, forage testing, a range of other services and support through our county extension offices. And so if you're not connected with your local county extension office, I encourage you to do that. You can connect with me and I can help establish a contact for you within your local county office. Langston University is also an extension institution here in the state of Oklahoma and does a range of things to support beginning producers. They do some small ruminant goat work. They have horticulture activities, and they do a small farm conference every year in April. So if you're in central Oklahoma, the last weekend of April, they'll be doing their small farm conference, and it's a really great event for folks that are beginning producers to gain some good education. Of course, the USDA has many technical services and special assistance programs through Natural Resource Conservation Service and other agencies, and they are a wealth of information. They have USDA service centers across the state. There's going to be a service center in nearly every county that's going to provide support for you for USDA services. The Oklahoma Association of Conservation Districts, there's a local conservation district within very close proximity to anywhere in the state of Oklahoma, and they can help you with lots of things, particularly those issues related to conservation practices, erosion, drainage, management of physical infrastructure on your farm or ranch operation. Oklahoma Career Tech, they are a great resource. They have ag business management coordinators, and they can do some really in-depth business planning consultation. They can guide you through. So let's say you use the ag plan tool and you build a basic business plan. They can actually take that and help you level it up and go a step further and really dial in your plan and think through the nuances of a business plan, among other things. And at OSU Extension, we have online courses. if you go to learn.extension.okstate.edu, or you go to that QR code there, you'll just see some of the examples of the online courses that we have. Everything from backyard chickens, beekeeping, backyard wildlife, beef cattle nutrition, Quicken for farm and ranch record keeping. We have a host of courses, market garden schools for those that maybe are interested in farmers market production. Really great resources. And these courses are self-paced. So you can take them at your own pace online. They're interactive. They're a combination of videos and different interactive elements to make it a pretty engaging as you move through it. And it's a great resource for those that maybe work full time, find it hard to go to traditional in-person courses. Maybe you're remote, you live far away from a community that's offering these types of programs. It's a great way to engage with learning in this way. I wanted to talk a little bit about our soil, water, and forage testing services as well. So at OSU Extension, I mentioned our county offices. We have an office in every one of Oklahoma's 77 counties where you can actually take soil, forage, your home well water, irrigation well water, and have it tested, and then actually have somebody provide consultation to you in terms of what might be needed to make improvements or amendments to your soil, or address issues to water quality so that you can get the best performance out of those resources. So our soil test, a basic routine analysis, is going to cost $10, and that will give you some of the basic things that you need for understanding your soil's nutrient. So it's going to be mostly the macronutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, pH. We can also do forage testing. So if you are, think about the importance of forage quality for animal health. And so we can actually test your forages. We can tell you, what your protein is, what your energy is, what might be a deficit in terms of nutrient needs to provide what that animal, what livestock you're feeding out with that forage would need to sustain them and to actually gain on that forage. And so we'll do an analysis and give you a detailed recommendation in terms of what supplemental feed materials might be needed. We can actually do testing on forages for nitrates. So in the summertime, if we've had drought conditions and there's concern of nitrate toxicity in forages, we can do some testing on that and help you understand if that forage is safe for your livestock to consume. We do a range of water quality testing. So household drinking water, if your drinking water comes from a well, in-ground water well, and it's your drinking resource for your house, and you'd like to get that tested to kind of know if there are any human health concerns, we can actually test that for you and give you a perspective and picture of what your water quality is. We can do the same thing for, say, surface water, ponds and things like that maybe livestock are drinking from. And then we can also do that for crop production and irrigation water quality, and do an analysis of your irrigation water. So those are some of the services. And for sake of time today, I'm going to stop there and just allow us to maybe have a little bit of time to take our poll and have some question and discussion. So what I'd like to do, the QR code's there, and I'm also going to launch the poll here on the screen. And so you can actually participate in the poll right here from Zoom, and then you can also do it from your QR code right there. I'm going to leave this poll there for a second and move over to the chat and see if there's any questions. So there's some questions in the chat about the chat being disabled. So I'm sorry about that. I see all the chat that you're putting in. I think what is happening is it's private. So I see any moderators actually see the chat questions, but the public doesn't see it like a traditional Zoom meeting because this is a webinar format. So go ahead and ask your questions, and then we will be able to address those, but it shouldn't be disabled. It just isn't public, if that makes sense. Yeah, so the question is there going to be a replay available? All of these sessions are going to be recorded. They will be made available to people who signed up and subscribed to the webinar series. We also will have these cataloged on YouTube. And so we'll have a beginning farmer rancher playlist on the agriculture economics department YouTube channel. And that will also be linked to our beginning farmer rancher webpage. So these will be available. I'll probably send an email out to everybody that was on here with this recording, within the next week or so. And then the whole catalog of recordings will be available at the end of the webinar series. I'm going to leave the poll open for folks to continue to answer questions. And then I'll start taking the questions as they come into the chat. So just to reiterate, because this is a webinar, the questions that you ask are private. Nobody else can see those except for me as the moderator. And then I will address those questions as they come in. So I see a question here. It says, are there benefits to doing the borrower training course before applying for FSA loans, or would it be better to apply and see if it's necessary? That's a great question. We actually have some FSA folks here with us today. They weren't intending to speak, I don't think, but if they wanted to chime in and address this question, I'd welcome that, Maddie, if you want to. But I would say that the borrower training probably would never hurt you. We have, in terms of the information that's provided there, there's a great detail of information that will, I think, improve your ability to think critically about your financial position, to plan and project and analyze your business. Most FSA loan officers don't necessarily require it as a prerequisite for an FSA loan, but it certainly could be a great tool for you to be best prepared to go into an FSA loan, if that makes sense.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick, Josh?
Yes, please do.
Hey. Hi, everybody. My name is Maddie Owen. I'm with Outreach with the Farm Service Agency. I think one of the things that a lot of people might get hung up on when they are applying for an FSA loan is that there is required of 3 years worth of experience. As Josh mentioned, it's not required that you take this borrower training unless it's requested from your farm loan officer or farm loan manager. However, if you only have, say, 2 years of experience and you're looking to get that 3rd year, but you really want to get your loan, that's when this borrower training can come in handy because it can be subbed out as one of your years worth of experience. Another sub out for that could be if you're a veteran or if you have an agriculture degree. There's a couple other ways that can work depending on the farm loan manager. So it's always recommended that you guys have a direct conversation with your farm loan officers and managers and just kind of lay it all out on the table at the very beginning before you start your process, just so you guys are aware of what's required and kind of get on the right track. But that's just the caveat to doing that pre-borrower training.
Thank you, Maddie. That's very helpful clarification on that. Any other questions here? For those of you that are mentioning that the poll issues with the poll. It should still be open. And I can throw the QR code up here again for those of you that need it. You throw the QR code up, which has a direct link to the poll. Please continue typing in questions, and I'll stay on for another few minutes. If there aren't any other questions at this time, then and you've completed the poll, then we really appreciate you joining us today, and you're welcome to jump off if you'd like to do so. But we'll continue discussion for anybody that has questions. And we do have folks actually from NRCS, FSA here with us today. So if you do have any specific questions, although we will touch on those in a few weeks, hopefully they would be able to support me and chime in and answer those questions.